The resume question of the day came in, and this person was asking about gaps in employment and pertaining to COVID and the years 2020 and 2021, and how do we think employers are reacting to that? And we're part of a holding company that we just don't do employment boost and career services. We also own a handful of recruiting and executive search companies, human capital consulting company. Like, we're very deep in all things HR and careers all day, every day. My personal opinion, what we're kind of witnessing going on right now in terms of hiring, no one cares, to be honest. Everyone is so short staffed. Those types of things that HR would often screen out about gaps in employment, and it's almost like they're not asking a lot of questions these days. Companies are hurting so much to get their workforces built back up. They are just hiring. And they've definitely have kind of taken away the magnifying glass. So, do you need to worry about gaps in employment right now? No, I don't know. I've been in the business 20 years of owning recruiting companies and employment boost, and I've never seen anything like this. It's a good time if you're looking for a job. With that being said, I think when things calm down, companies will start to look at resumes a little closer. If there's any kind of pullback in the economy, where we start to get into that recession talk again, and you start seeing layoffs, then that magnifying glass goes back on the resume, because companies may not need to hire somebody, but they want to hire somebody. And that's when the hiring process slows down, and companies get a little more choosy and are very picky about who they hire during those times. 2008 up until about 2012 is one of those periods. So keep in mind that companies really start to focus on that stuff. Now, the employers that I'm thinking of that I worked with over the last 2 decades, I think most people know what was going on in 2020. Things were crazy from March, the shutdowns, in Michigan, we couldn't go anywhere. We got offices in Cleveland, Denver, Chicago. Like, it was crazy times. So I think employers are looking at 2020 as a mulligan. Like, I don't think they're going to be overly concerned about employment gaps in 2020. I believe that 2021 is going to be an issue, because as you talk to more people on the executive side of companies, when you start talking to, I say the large small business owners, like, 100 people, 200 people, they're struggling so much for talent right now. It's almost like they have a bad taste in their mouth because so many people have exited the workforce. And I think there might be a stigma at some point. And, people are going to look back and say, oh, did you just sit on unemployment for 18 months and you didn't work? And, if everyone did that, the country would come to a crash. Obviously, most people kept working. But there were some people that chose to just sit home for, 18 months or more and just collected a lot of unemployment, for example. I think if you're in that situation and you don't have a good story to go with that, then you might run into some trouble. Right now, companies are looking at, when did the vaccinations kick in? Like April of 2021. I would say by the time summer came around, then most companies were expecting people to go back into the workforce, even if you're working from home, for example. So if you had a 2-year gap on your resume and you say COVID, you better have a story for it. And I don't think that's an issue right now because there's such a shortage of workers. Companies are paying attention. 2023 comes around and there's a recession. If you just sat home for the last 2 years, you could have worked, but you chose not to. And that's going to be a little tougher. They're going to, people got a little bit of a salty taste right now because we got supply chain issues. We don't have the workers to drive trucks, to get our food and our healthcare supplies. And there's shortages everywhere. And, that conversation's starting to happen more and more often about, well, where'd all the workers go? I don't know if you want to end up in that bucket of, where you just sitting on the sidelines during this time frame. So, well, I don't think it's an issue right now. You got to step back and say, will there be a stigma potentially in a couple years from now? And my thought is just have a good story. You better have a great story that explain why you were out of work for 2 years. And because here's the ultimate thing. And this is how HR often looks at it. This is how executive hiring committees often look at it. They look at the time frame and they go, okay, end of 2008, this person was out of work for 6 months. Everyone knows that was like pure hell, recession, world's ending. So even if you wanted to work, it was tough to work. Kind of happened around 2001, happened 2008, 2009. Like even if you wanted a job, it was hard to get a job. So companies knew that. The trick here is, in 2021, there's so many jobs open, that's not an excuse anymore. You can't say, well, I wanted to work, but I couldn't find a job. No, there's jobs everywhere. There's so many jobs. From manufacturing to tech to hospitality, everywhere is hiring right now. So you can't walk into that interview and go, oh, I wanted a job, but I couldn't find one. No one's going to buy that excuse. So you're going to have a really good excuse for, you don't need one for 2020. 2020 was crazy. The country was just shut down. It makes sense. But once the vaccination started to roll out and that people went back to work, I think that's when, companies are going to sit back and say, well, what did you do? Because again, companies are looking for that consistency. They're looking for hard workers. They want people that they can count on, that are reliable. So, and I'm just predicting, right? I just know how some companies work. I'm not saying all companies are going to do that, but it's one of those things that if you've been out of work for 2 years and you can go back to work and you just didn't want to, go do something. Do some consulting. So you can put consulting on your resume. Do something to say, hey, I was making like a contribution to society. I was trying to stay busy. No one wants, not no one. People are hiring anybody right now. It's crazy times. But the general thought is it's like you've been out of the game for 2 years. What'd you do to stay sharp? Take some classes. You can get master class pass for like $199 right now or something like that. There's like Coursera. Go take some classes. Say, what did you do in that time? Well, with COVID going on, I wanted to be safe and stay home. I took some college classes. I took some, online classes. Do something and put that on your resume. Show them that you stayed busy, that you stayed sharp, that you gained new skills. Do something. Just don't have a 2-year gap on your resume. Because you're going to have a hard time explaining that one. Especially, you're not going to be able to say, I couldn't find a job. There's just too many jobs right now. That was it worked really well in 2008, 2009. So, I hope I answered your question. You gotta think, man, the world's just a judgmental place. Companies are always going to scrutinize resumes because they've all been burned. They've all been burned. It's one of those things that no one wants to lay out $10,000, $20,000 to find out that this person we just hired is not going to work out. Companies are always going to scrutinize resumes. So keep that in mind. There may or may not be a stigma. I'm just saying, if you've been out of work for, 18 months right now, pick up a class, do something to put on your resume, pick up a side gig, some side consulting, do some pro bono work, go help somebody, do some charitable work. Just have something to show that you stayed busy, because I think that's going to go a long way instead of just having a 2-year gap. So anyways, that's my insights on this one. I hope it answered your question. If you have your own question, we'll put a link in the description where you can submit your own career or resume related question, and we'll try to get you featured on the show. But until then, we'll catch you on the next one.